It's 3:30. The meeting is due to start, and I see, I believe, 6 of the library building committee members in, so we have a quorum. And there's also quite a few members of the public joining, so welcome to everyone on the public. Before I call the meeting to order, let me point out that this meeting is being recorded. I believe Westborough TV intends to put it up on the Westborough YouTube channel after the meeting is over. So let's see. The standard announcement: pursuant to Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022, this meeting will be conducted via remote means. Members of the public who wish to access the meeting may do so in the following manner: joining the Zoom meeting at the link in the agenda. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so for reasons of economic hardship and despite best efforts, we will post on the Westborough Public Library's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. As I said, this meeting is being and will be recorded. So I'll call the meeting to order. I'd like to welcome everybody. I see, as I said, quite a few members of the public. I should introduce myself. I'm Ed Baldwin. I'm a library trustee and have been for something like 9 years now, I believe, and the chair of the library building committee. So with that said, let's start with the public forum. I see quite a few members of the public here. If you can raise your hand or wave or something to let me know whether you'd like to speak or whether you'd just like to listen in, I would appreciate getting an idea how much time we should need and how much time each person should have. Okay, I'm not seeing anything, so I think I'm going to just go through and invite anyone who's interested to talk. We'll have to do this one at a time, it being Zoom. And I'll try and allocate about 2 minutes for everyone so that we don't go on too long. So let's see, looking across, I see someone here labeled public who's on mute. Would you care to, whoever that is, would you care to speak and identify yourself to speak? Let's see, I'm going on down looking for more public members. There's Julia Rissmiller, and please pardon me if I get your names, if I pronounce your names incorrectly. You're on mute, Julia.
Sorry, that's correct. I sent Maureen an email that I thought maybe I could just read.
Okay.
So this was the day after the vote. And I had been planning to go to the vote I'm planning on going to the town meeting, in particular to vote on this issue. Unfortunately, I tested positive for COVID on Sunday, so obviously I didn't go. And I was upset by the outcome, and the fact that the vote happened at 11 o'clock at night and it excluded a lot of people. So my email, I said, "Hi Maureen, I'm a resident of Westborough. I'm really upset by the vote at town meeting last night. I came down with COVID over the weekend, so I could not attend the meeting. I cannot stop thinking about this, and I'm wondering if there's a way to get this back on the town meeting agenda and/or hold a special meeting to reconsider the vote." And I actually looked at the town meeting handbook and found that there was a way to there are circumstances where there is a revote. I'm relatively new to town and still trying to figure out how all of this works in terms of town meetings and warrants. I read an article in the New York Times about a town in New Hampshire that was able to overturn a 50% budget cut for the schools by holding another meeting where at least 50% of the residents showed up to vote, and I provided a link. It's hard for me to be okay with the idea that this decision can be made by a few hundred people. The nature of the town meeting excludes so many people, and even more so given the COVID pandemic. I suppose I could have gone and voted and risked spreading COVID to 500 people. Of course, I would never have done that. If you do have any thoughts on how we can get a revote, I would like to help.
Thank you. So I'd just like to keep working through the members of the public until we hear from everyone. The next person on my screen is labeled Eileen's iPad. Eileen, are you there? Would you like to speak?
No, I wouldn't.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You may want to go on mute. I've been hearing somebody's dog a minute ago. Okay,
Okay.
the next is Jennifer Michaels. Jennifer, I see you're off mute. Great.
Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't wanting to talk, but just
Okay.
listening. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. John is part of Vertex. Steve Bottiglieri. And pardon me if I'm crashing your name.
That's pretty close. The G is silent. It's Steve
Ah,
Buttiglieri. I
Buttiglieri,
wasn't going to
okay.
say anything, but I was just thinking about this. You know, if there's something significant that changes in the circumstances about the library project, I can see having a special town meeting. But if there aren't any circumstances, and something like that, it's not something. An example of that would be if we got $13 million in ARPA money that would go toward the library project. But if there are no circumstances like that, and the project situation and circumstances are pretty much the same, I think a special town meeting just to have a revote is sort of undermines our democracy, even if it's part of the process. This was advertised months in advance. There were lots of meetings beforehand. The town meeting where we were going to vote on this was well known well in advance, and people on both sides, I'm sure, had circumstances where they could come or could not come, and that's just the way the chips fell. That's how democracy works. You put a stake in the ground. We're voting now, and the vote came in. That's
Thank you. Yep. Next person I'm seeing is Juliana. Juliana, would you like to speak? Okay. How about Stephanie's iPad? Juliana, you're on mute if you're trying to talk to us.
No, I don't want to speak.
Okay, thank you. And then I see a Marine. Okay, I'm not hearing anything from Marine. So we've heard two public voices, and I'll try and summarize them, and please correct me if I'm getting it wrong. One was felt that having the meeting very late made it difficult for her and other people to come in. The other, and would like to have a revote. The other voice is that without a significant change in the facts, he feels that a revote would not be appropriate. Have I missed any members of the public at this point? Anyone else want to express something? I see there's another whole page of people. Pardon me, there's a lot of people who I did not know were here until just now. Rather than go through and call out every name, do people know how to raise their hand in Google or in Zoom? I'm sorry. I see some people saying yes. I'd say if you'd like to speak, please raise your hand or give a thumbs up or something, and I'll come through and call on you.
Hey, Ed, so I would just say at the bottom of the screen, it says reactions. If you click on that, and then within that, you can see the raise hand option pop up.
Thank you. Was that Sean?
Yeah.
Speaking there? Yes, great. Thank you. And you can also just take yourself off mute and say something. That will work too.
So I just gave an example, Lee, my hand's up there, but it's just to demonstrate.
Okay.
So Ed, you
I see Sophia has her hand up there. Sophia Kogan.
Yeah, so I think it wasn't just that it wasn't accessible. I think it was particularly inaccessible to working people with families. And so I think it disproportionately excluded people who work and people who have young children, just given the timing of the meeting. So it's not like, this was kind of equally inaccessible to everybody in Westborough. And I think people who work and who have children in Westborough are a demographic that are more supportive of the library, and they were uniquely disenfranchised by this process.
I agree.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments?
Hi, this is Taj Qureshi. I'm sorry, I joined a couple minutes late. I spoke with Maureen, I think earlier this week. I was actually one of the few people that attended the town hall with my son. He was 3 years old. I think he was like the youngest one there. So we came because we felt like both my husband and my vote would count. And obviously we saw I was like 7 votes short. And I think the first thing I told Maureen was that, I mean, we're people that frequent the library 3 to 4 times a week. And I didn't feel that the population that I saw there reflected who I see in the library every day. So it was really bothering me that this article was like right smack dab in the middle of the agenda. And then on top of that, the people, I think that if they were able to attend, had they, you know, had childcare either in the gym or elsewhere, then I feel like that vote would have passed like with flying colors. So I just wanted to add that statement as well.
I just want to point out they did actually have childcare, but I think it ended a little bit earlier because my kids were in the childcare until about 8:30 or 9 when my husband was able to pick them up. So they did have a little bit. It wasn't well.
I had no idea.
Advertised. Yeah, it wasn't well advertised,
so,
and I think it ended at like some earlier time before the vote.
Yeah, because I think they started discussing this item around like 9:15, and by 10:30 they took the vote and we were out the door. So yeah, but I didn't even know about that. If I knew that, I would have told some people, but I had no idea. We just kind of made a split-minute decision, like let's just both go and see what happens. So we brought snacks, iPad, and games and hope for the best.
Well, certainly appreciate that effort, but she was correct that there was childcare, but it did end at 9 o'clock, which is not something I was aware of that it ended at that point.
Any other comments or thoughts? Lee and Sean, y'all have your hands up.
Yeah. I wasn't aware there was childcare either. Do we know how that was advertised and how far in advance it was advertised? Did he speak to it at the beginning of the meeting even? And I wonder how many people left when the childcare closed. Does anybody know how it was advertised?
Those are great questions. I actually did not see it advertised. I can't say that I was looking for that either because my kids are beyond that age. Well, most of them are, and they can watch my other one. But typically it is a service that is provided at all of the town meetings, and it's run by the school district. And I believe it's usually the National Honor Society students that run it.
Sean, you have your hand up.
All right, now here we go. No, Mary, thank you. I believe you are correct that it's the National Honor Society. And I think they do it regularly, but you're correct. It is not well publicized.
That's okay.
As to the lateness of the meeting, so our annual town meeting, typically held in March, is on a Saturday. Normally, we try and do the larger items at that annual town meeting. I think unfortunately, because there was a time frame involved with this having to be approved, it tied us into the special fall town meeting. I know there has been a lot of comments received about trying to then move this fall town meeting to possibly to a Saturday going forward. And Lee, you may know this better than I do. I believe that would then require a vote of town meeting. So it would have to be an article at town meeting approved by the town to then move the meeting in the fall to be on a Saturday. But it's possible that that article could be put forward for the future, but obviously that doesn't help us here much right now.
Okay. Any other comments from members of the public who are listening? I see we have quite a few. And thank you all for your interest. If you do have a comment, just unmute yourself and talk rather than, here's something from iPhone with her hand raised. Not sure who that is. Let me switch over. I see Eric, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, sorry, I took a second to unmute. Yeah, I'm wondering, could you explain just what the process would be to request another special town meeting? We're sort of discussing now whether we should or shouldn't, but if we wanted to, what would the process be to do that?
Maureen, Amy, I believe you've been researching that already, so maybe you can give us a summary.
Sure, I can answer that. So I checked with the moderator, and there are two ways to hold a special town meeting. One is for the Board of Selectmen to call for a special town meeting with 14 days notice to the community. So the library trustees could approach the Board of Selectmen and request a special town meeting. The other way, and that could be done at any time and at any point. The other way to request a special town meeting is for a resident who is a registered voter to issue a petition with specific wording, and he is willing to help to make sure the wording is correct. And to present a petition with at least 200 signatures of registered voters to the Board of Selectmen. And if a petition with 200 signatures is presented to them, they are required to hold a special town meeting within 45 days. Does that help, Eric?
Yes, yes, it does. Yeah, I was thinking that, and I had sort of thought that was the rules. And so my thought, given that, is that if you could get 200 people who wanted this, then it sort of is going to happen. And if you can't get 200 people who want it, then it probably shouldn't happen. So that would be the approach I would take to try and get such a petition going.
Can I ask a quick question? Can you just tell us what the time frame is for if residents did get together and get signatures? Is there a deadline for that from when the town meeting was held?
I can't hear you.
There's not a deadline in that way per se. It just would be the grant times out on January 9th. So if we were going to hold a special town meeting, it would need to be before that date.
Maureen or Sean, I just had a question on that. Would that petition need to be presented to the select board at a select board meeting, or could it be sent in to them at any time?
I don't know the answer to that.
You can always send in a request, whether you have to or not. If you send into a request, they do have to read it.
Can I make a point of order question, Ed?
Yes, please do.
This is Walter, in case you can't see me. I have to be on a phone right now. Are we having public forum or a library building discussion at this point? Because I'm getting confused, because they're usually in a public forum, people make their comments, but it seems like we've increased the library building committee to 25 people.
It is public forum and people are making comments. We're also responding to some of their questions is the way I see it right now.
Okay.
The people who are more familiar with procedure than I know whether that's an appropriate way to handle it.
It's my understanding you can comment during public forum. We typically do not.
Okay.
Did we start with a public forum, Ed? Because I missed the first 5 minutes.
Yes, we started with the public forum and we're still in it. We have approximately 50 members of the public here, and we've been inviting anyone with comments to speak up.
Then we're in the clear. We're in the clear if it's under.
It is in the public forum section. Okay.
Yep.
But I will ask the trustees and building committee and so on to let's confine ourselves, sorry, to answering questions from the public without getting into strategic discussions as part of the public forum. We'll have those strategic discussions later in this meeting. Any other questions or comments from the public? As I said, go ahead.
This is Judith Tully. I just have a thought. I'm hearing the families with school-age children. I know where you're coming from. Mine are grown and flown, but we've been longtime town meeting members. I would just hesitate to talk about your demographic as the demographic most using the library most of the time, because I think it's the messaging we want is that the library is used by residents from the time it opens until the time it closes, and all ages and stages. I'm now a senior citizen, hard to believe, but I'm also there all the time. And when I would come home from work, when I was working, just trying to sneak in there before closing, there would be all kinds of people sitting in the reading room, etc. So I'm not criticizing. I understand the struggle for how to manage family life balance and town meeting. It's incredibly frustrating and confusing. I wish I had the answer, but in the we know the population is supportive and very active in the library, but please don't exclude the other residents, because I think it detracts from the message that we're trying to present.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from the public? As I said, speak up or raise your hand. Anything? I see two. Okay. Steve Buttiglieri, and I hope I got it better that time.
Close enough. I've heard worse. Thank you. I think also to be prepared in case the current vote stays, we should talk a little bit about the estimates for repairs and in preparation, whether that's today or at the next library meeting. And I'd just like to know where I could find the estimate for the option to repair all the things that need to be repaired.
Maureen,
Where can I find that?
I believe that's on the library webpage. Is that correct?
The library webpage?
That is correct. We've been posting estimates and all the other information we get in the course of the project.
Thank you. I will look there.
Okay. And I think if you get in touch with any of the library staff, they can walk you through the pages to the right place. I also see a hand up that's labeled iPhone. Any comment from that person?
They may not know they're muted.
That's true. Yes, you are muted. If you're trying to talk, you're muted. We're not hearing anything. Okay. I'm not hearing anything. Hearing thing from Mr. and Ms. iPhone. Are there any questions or comments from anyone else?
Hi, Sean here. Thanks for the comments, the answers in the chat. So it sounds like there's a path forward should that proceed. I was at the town meeting and a lot of information to unpack given 10 years of work, and you never know who's coming informed or just hearing it for the first time. Nevertheless, a couple things I thought about walking away from there was, should you proceed with a revote? How are you thinking about, advertising that better, pointing towards more of the information that you have? I think, there's a lot there. So one, how to better market or potentially how to better articulate the, some of the questions and answers. So I think one thing was obviously cost, right? Especially as we head into a raising rate environment over the next couple of years, right? What does that full picture look like? Whether it's good or bad, right? Just kind of painting that with a little more clarity. Obviously, no one knows what the future is, but and I don't know if if the committee has had conversations with potential lenders, but what we could potentially be looking at. And then the other part, which, and this might be on me, not fully understanding some of the space and its use. So I heard a lot about youth. I heard a lot about the adult and the senior. For one example, I did hear a little bit about teens, but one question I had was, how would that space be used for, say, that segment? And I say that because certainly when I look in the master plan for the town, there's other capital projects that get listed there, like a teen center, for example. And I don't know that the library has that the planned new library has space to host something like that, or is there overlaps to say, it might not be a full-born teen center, but do we have the opportunity to get it kind of 2 for 1, if you will, by using this project? And if you look at it that way, when say a teen center is 10, 15, 20 million, does this then become a deal, even though it's 40 million, right? It's sizable, but does this become interesting looking through that perspective? So I only make that comment because expanding on kind of things that are listed in the master plan, future capital projects, and how this space might serve those purposes. Thank you.
Thank you. I see a comment here on the chat, which is, was the windows replacement estimate 149,000 and the roof estimate replacement 300,000? And I don't know those numbers off the top of my head. I do know they were about 10 years ago, and the costs have, as we all know, gone up a lot since then. Maureen, maybe you can, do you happen to have those numbers, the actual numbers?
Let me see if I can pull them out of the estimate while you're taking the next question.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? I said just unmute yourself and speak up, please.
And there's another comment in the chat.
Okay, that's true. It appears there was about a 2.5% turnout of eligible voters, and more than 2.5% have a strong opinion on the matter. I'm going to read the comment to the group. If it appears there was about a 2.5% turnout of eligible voters, I do believe that more than 2.5% of Westborough residents have a strong opinion on the matter. I do believe it is a direct effect of the format of the vote. A 4+ hour meeting on a weeknight discourages participation and becomes impractical for many. But definitely more, about I think 2.5% is right. That's also 2 or 3 times as many people as typically appear at a town meeting, unless there's a major school issue involved. Any other comments?
Hi, this is, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, somebody.
I was going to make a comment that I was surprised at the amount of time and concern there was on parking, and that I thought that the one task we should take on, particularly if we're going back to another vote, is to prepare information to articulate where there is parking, kind of how many parking spots there are within whatever, 200 yards or whatever, and try to refute that there is no parking and try to build that case.
Lee, you've got your hand up. Did I miss someone else? Go ahead, Lee. Oh, you're on mute.
Unmute. Okay. There are at least 40 parking spots between the end of the block through the Forbes building and the church on both sides of the street. So if you're willing to walk 2 blocks, you're going to be okay. I've never, ever been there and not been able to get a spot. I think we really do have to attack this, Pete. We had a parking study that we should actually read certain sections of to inform the public. I think the people that came to the meeting came predetermined on how they were going to vote. I think most of the arguments they gave were relatively specious arguments and could have been aggressive maybe in countering them. There was misinformation. There was misinformation at the finance advisory meeting that people may have saw, where one of the members said that the Congo church was going to be closed for 2 years. I mean, some people heard that. Now that wasn't actively refuted at our hearing, but it did come up, the question of the effect on the Congo church. And there were quite a few Congo church members there, and they may have been there because of that. So I think we're dealing with a lot of people who came predetermined, just like the people who wanted to vote for it did, but they came with a lot of misinformation or misunderstanding that they were willing to voice. And I think we weren't quite aggressive enough on saying, wait just a minute, nobody gets to park exactly in front of where they want to be in any town or city. It's not a terrible thing to have to walk a block or 2. And then the whole other issue about how many people go there with baby carriages. You're not going to push a baby carriage across Route 9, and you're not going to drive a baby out to some far off field. Kids aren't going to ride their bicycles from school to some far off place. This issue of where it is, I think, is terribly important. And we see that with the users. And I think the other disenfranchised group, I certainly believe on the parent side, because I had parents here that had difficulty with it. But I think there are seniors who don't want to be out after dark, especially when they know it's going to be a really rainy, difficult night. It was horrible driving home that night. So I think the point not to just emphasize the children and the families does a disservice to others, and we need to really speak up for other people that have difficulty getting places. And I think if you send a letter to the selectmen for a special time meeting, you don't have to be there to present it to them at a meeting. You can send it ahead of time, and then Christy works with the chairperson to put that on the agenda. So you can mail it in, or you can go and meet with the chair and her to get it on.
Thank you, Lee. Ms. Qureshi, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yeah, that's perfect. So going back to the 2 options that you guys were presenting about, one being asking the board to call a special town meeting, and the second one doing the petition with 200 plus signatures. Does one have to happen before the other? Like, I guess I'm not familiar. Like, if we were to request the board to call the special town meeting, how much time do they have to get back to us? Like, is it in everyone's best interest to go ahead and start the petition, just so that we have a backup plan? That was my question.
I don't know, should we comment on that now? Select people, can we comment or just take that under advisement?
So and Lee, correct me if I'm wrong here, I believe it is not a both thing, it's one or the other.
That was my understanding.
Mine too.
Yeah. I would suggest, if you're interested in a revote, that you get the signatures. I think it would, as a member of the select board, I guess I'll say that because some people on this may not know, it would be unlikely for the select board to, I would imagine, I don't speak for everybody on the board, to schedule another meeting without something significantly having changed with the article. It would be, I think, as Mr. Boudelieri said, a disservice to, what happened at the last town meeting. So I would encourage you to go forward with the 200 signatures.
Thank you. Bob.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Ed. I just had a quick question following up on Walter Leslie. I'm just questioning the format of this meeting. I know we're in public forum. I have several observations and questions on agenda item 3 from the other night. But as a member of the building committee, I was holding off until after the public forum, but I'm seeing that some of the building committee are now talking. So do we ask that now, or do we wait until the building committee starts deliberating and talking about what happened in our future plans until after the public forum is officially over?
Let's wait until the public forum ends before I really start getting into policy. Jody Friedman or Fredman.
Hi there. I just had a couple questions, and I know I've been talking to a few of you about it. Can everybody hear me?
I can hear you.
Me? Yeah. Okay. So one of the things I was wondering about is I looked at the budget, and I know that I think one of the reasons why it didn't pass is because the amount of the cost went up by so much. And I did talk to, I think it was Maureen, about the budget, and she's like, we're trying to keep it as low as possible. But I looked on the budget, and it looked like there were some things like over $1 million for architect fees, over $1 million for furnishings. And I'm just wondering, is there any way just, to go through the budget? Because I feel like if it's well managed, can't we get those numbers a little bit more affordable? I feel like, with fails, it just from what I've researched, it seems like it just went, it just keeps going and going. And if you manage a project really well, maybe we could get those costs down, and then everyone will be like, okay, sure, it just seemed like some of the prices were very inflated. That was one thing. The other item I wanted to mention is I did ask for an update on the estimates for renovations, and I know you guys had said it was like 19 million. It doesn't look like you have a real estimate for that. So I do think that would be really helpful as a plan B to have a better estimate. I know things are crazy expensive now for a renovation and ADA approval, but from someone who's done smaller renovation projects, I just would like to understand that whole 19 million. If this doesn't, if it, as a plan B, that might be a good way to kind of have a backup plan if this doesn't pass. But I do feel like it will pass if maybe you could get the cost down, or maybe make some adjustments. And it should not, I know it could impact the grant, but I have to be honest, there may be more funding that comes in, one thing. And then as far as it impacting the grant, I can't imagine if you talk to, if there's a way to work with them on that in order to get prices, in order to get costs down. So that's just my feedback. I think like we're almost there, but not quite. And I do feel like the budget needs to be a little bit more leaner. Maybe you can get it down some more. A really good, and what was up with the over $1 million for architectural, plans and things like that? And I don't even know how much has been spent so far.
Ed, could we have John address that? John Lemieux?
Yes.
One second.
Oh, wait,
I would not address that.
One more thing.
Okay.
One more thing. Also, the finance committee was not in favor of this for some of the reasons I said. So that's what, and they didn't really get into it at the meeting, but that's, so I'm showing you what the other side is, because I know, I want to, kind of show you where the other side is coming from. So go ahead.
Okay, let's take Sean's advice and not go into that in detail. I will say we feel it's a good cost estimate, and we did actually push the NBLC, the Board of Library Commissioners, to lower the standard so that we could get a lower cost, and that was not going to happen. Although our legislative delegation is working to make something like that happen, so that's that's like Plan D at this point. But with that said, let me move on to Ms. Jacobs.
Thanks. I think you might have been just talking about what I was going to ask for. So first, I do agree with Jody that I think seeing that alternative, like 18 or $19 million, when I saw a previous presentation about that really helped me to kind of accept the larger price tag, because it felt like, you could band-aid something for 19 million, or you could do something else. So I agree with that. I think that'd be really nice to see more clearly. And then I was going to ask about the sort of state funding piece of it and sort of the timing of that and how that plays in, if that's even likely to happen. I've got a little letter writing party happening this weekend in my neighborhood to the state, but like, is that something that you would want to kind of like wait for that decision and then try and schedule the next vote after that, so that, you know, potentially the price tag is a little bit easier to swallow for folks?
Let's just make a note for the committee to talk about waiting for the
Well, you
legislature
got,
to come to the decision.
you guys didn't answer my question though about the amount, about looking at the budget and trying to get it down a little bit, because you know, it was 1.4 million for furnishing,
Jody?
and then it was over $1 million.
Jody, this is a public comment period. It is not a public
Okay.
discussion period. We heard your
Okay,
comment.
well, oh, okay, I'm not, okay.
So some of the comments we need to consider are trying to find a way to decrease cost and strengthening the information on the alternative, the straight up base repair costs we've been calling it. So let's take that into account when we switch over to the board meeting. Any other questions or comments?
I have one more. I'm not sure if it's a question, but I know that there are the trustees, the foundation, the Friends, and the library. And has fundraising begun, or is it happening in earnest, or does that, I know that's, I thought I knew that was why the foundation was formed, you know, as a 501c3. I'm just wondering if there are funds now, or whether there needs to be a big push to get funds, or is that not, is that not possible due to the restrictions of the grant?
Reen, do you want to answer that? If that's in scope for discussion.
I'm not sure. I missed the end of it. You were asking about is fundraising happening? And I'm sorry, I didn't catch the part about how it affects the grant.
If it is happening, certainly I don't think the public is aware that it's happening, and I think that would be really helpful to know that. And I wasn't sure if the grant specifies that your other support, 501c3 support groups are able or not able to fundraise to reduce the.
Oh, I understand what you're asking. So there's nothing in the grant that requires any fundraising at all. Many towns pay for their project through borrowing like we would, or through a debt exclusion. And most libraries do some fundraising. We have a private nonprofit foundation that was formed in 2017 that intended to kick off fundraising as soon as the project was approved. So
Okay.
they've been doing a little bit of quiet fundraising behind the scenes, but nothing big and public.
I'm going to say I see a comment in the chat with some estimates of the loan amounts and total payoff dates and so on. That I think there are some incorrect assumptions in there. Typically, the town uses a 20-year period loan, and they get considerably. They get I don't know the rates, but much better than we see as individual consumers. Jody, you still have your hand up?
Oh, sorry, I'm good.
No problem. Okay.
No.
Lee.
Yes, I just wanted to comment on Mr. Ball's You're muted.
You just went back on mute somehow, Lee.
Mr. Ball is closely tied to the sort of economic life of Westborough. And I think if somebody like him, it seems like he indicated he might be interested in fundraising, that we probably could get a very good fundraising effort going.
I see in the chat that someone asked about the timing. I'm paraphrasing here, about the timing of the town meeting versus the ARPA funding. And an answer was that the town vote would have to be held before January 9th. It would have to be held before January 9th. So we would need and that town meeting would have to be announced in advance. So we'd have to have the legislature decide whatever they wanted to decide by roughly mid-December, and that would be pretty late. Other comments? Questions, Jody? I'm assuming your hand is still up for no particular reason. I am not seeing any other comments, and we've been talking for 40 or 45 minutes now. If you have any major objections to us ending the public forum and switching over to the next agenda item, which is discussion of plans going forward, if you have any objections, please go off mute and tell us. And otherwise, I'd like to go ahead and switch over to that. Okay. Sean, my understanding is that everybody is more than welcome to listen, but it's primarily going to be the building committee and business and members talking at this point.
Correct.
Okay. Seeing no particular objections, I'm going to switch over to a discussion of town meeting vote and plans going forward. So I guess the big question is that I think we have the building committee has three choices now. One is we can not seek a repeat vote. One is we can hope that there's 200 signature petition gets to the Board of Selectmen and let that drive the vote. And the third option is I guess the library trustees would be the ones to do it, could ask the Board of Selectmen to schedule a special town meeting to have a vote. Does that summarize the options correctly? Anyone disagree?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so let's hear some comments in favor of or against any of those options. Walter, you've got your hand up.
Hi, sorry, I had it on mute. Okay, I am completely not in favor of a revote unless there's new information presented. I think I might have trouble supporting that myself. I think this is the way we do things in town. There was actually 500 people there. So that's a very large turnout for town meeting. And I really don't like a precedent of I didn't get my vote, so we're going to have another town meeting. I think if we can if we do get anything that would change the prospects, it would be well worthy of doing that. I think more importantly, what we should be doing is perhaps having a special town meeting, or at a minimum planning for the ATM to have funds put aside to do a design for the renovation work, because we did not do a real renovation study because we all prefer this solution. But this solution may not pass, or most likely will pass. I think it's a long shot that we'll get the state extra money, and I think we should, costs are going up, and I think we should be therefore looking at the next stage, which would be to get a design done actually for renovation, and that costs money, probably $1 million or something for the full design, but you probably get something for less, and I think town meeting would have to vote on that. So that's my 2 cents.
Other comments? Bob?
I had a question on that procedurally. going back to the renovation, I mean, do the current Lamaro Pagano Architects contract and the Vertex contract allow for them to go back in and work on a reno, or do we have to start totally from scratch with another RFP process to go back out for design services and OPM services for the reno? Or can we utilize the current team already in place that have already had a couple of years experience with this project?
I don't know the answer to that question. I believe that the current contract doesn't, it assumes that the vote passed and that we go on building the new thing. John, from Vertex, can you comment on that?
You know, it's probably a good question for Shab, Ed, because
Okay.
That's purely a procurement question. If the RFQ was written in such a way when we answered it, that it was, you know, it encompassed that, contemplating that scope, then I think you're fine, but that would be a question for procurement.
Just for the members of the public here, Shab is Shab Khan, I believe.
Yes.
And she is the procurement officer for the town of Westborough. Bill, you've got your hand up.
Yes, I think we should attempt to answer all the questions that we can here at this meeting. But this is an example of, it should take a little bit of background information, and there may be some more things coming that we need to digest and then have a follow-up meeting.
Okay. Bob, you've got your hand up again.
Oh, sure. I was just going to follow up with some of the comments, and some of the folks did bring this up, but in retrospect, you know, what? Oh, in retrospect, during this Monday evening meeting and moving forward, I think we could have been more forceful in showcasing the cost of doing nothing. In other words, you know, the repair option that, you know, $18 million to sink into a 42-year-old building that's pretty much out of date, and which after all the upgrading, you're still going to have the same building. You're still going to have a 1980 building, and it won't address our new programming needs, future programming needs. And the life cycle after all those repairs, 18 million or whatever, maybe 20, 25 years versus a brand new building that's going for, you know, 50 years. And the delta, I don't think the people, I think we need to do a bit better job at showing the delta. You had $38 million project, subtract almost a $10 million grant, that's 28 million. And you're talking about a brand new building with a new programming space, state-of-the-art code, and it will probably last for 50 years versus renovating that old 42-year-old building and for 18 million. So look at the delta, you know, the cost of, you know, the cost, I think we should have probably, or moving forward, we need to be more proactive in showing the delta.
Okay. I'd like to comment, let's not turn this into a post-mortem discussion of what happened on Monday night.
The reason I said that, Ed, is because I saw on the agenda for 3:40 discussion of town meeting vote.
Yeah.
So
we
were
I would have
doing
to-
an autopsy of the meeting. So
Isn't that exactly what we should be doing at this meeting? And in addition to planning forward, we should be discussing what happened at town meeting, how our presentation went, how our committee felt the presentation went, and areas in which we can improve.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I just wanted to share my thoughts on it. I understand completely what Walter is saying about not bringing it forward in terms of a town department that put a article out for a vote and didn't get the outcome they were looking for, and not having substantial significant change in the circumstances. So I understand that view of doesn't want to, it's a slippery slope to set a precedent for a town for an article to be brought back up by a town department. I get that. And, you know, my heart is in one place and I get that in the other. However, I cannot ignore the almost 80 plus emails, comments, and texts that I've gotten from people the last couple of days about how they wish the circumstances of town meeting were different so that they could be included in the vote. And so I think it's not procedurally against anything that we do. It is written in our town bylaws that if a citizen's petition comes forward, it gets brought to a vote. I think that's exactly written into our town laws for a reason. And so I fully support a citizen's petition.
Pete?
My questions, and I'm sorry, I didn't look at the agenda carefully maybe, but is there are we planning to have an update in regard to the ARPA funding and other things that have been going on at the State House? I saw some emails concerning that. And it seems to me our answer to next steps somewhat hinge on those other discussions.
That's a very good point. Thank you. Maureen, can you give us an update on those?
All I have for you that is new is there's been no new information about ARPA at this point. We're just still, all 12 towns are still encouraging residents to click the link and write the email to their state legislators. And then what you saw via email was some language that is being drafted to include in the closeout budget that the state legislature is working on right now. They have surplus funding that they need to finish spending to close out the fiscal 22 budget. And there's a possibility that all of the library projects could be included either there or with ARPA. So that's as much information as I have. There's no timeline and there's no guarantee that either one will happen. That's all I got.
Let me ask about the timeline. You said there's none, but there is a point where there's a new governor, the legislative session ends. There are deadlines that we know that those decisions must be made prior to. In my observation of the legislature over the years is they go to the last minute. So the budget closeout, what is the last possible date? Do you know?
I think it's December 31st. I think it has to be closed by the end of the year.
So that's not timely for us then.
No.
And the ARPA funding decision, is that at the same timeline or could it even be later?
That it could be later, because if the legislature decides not to spend that and let the next legislative session deal with it, then that could get pushed into next year.
In the ARPA funding, is a legislature decision or is it an executive branch decision?
My understanding is it's legislature, but somebody correct me if you know differently.
Just a related point, I understood the emails correctly. The legislature is also looking at, I'll say, tweaking the rules the NBLC has for giving the grants to allow more time for the towns to accept the grant or more flexibility in the design of the building. Is that correct? And that is
that issue has been proposed. NBLC is not in support of that. There are a bunch of reasons related to the timing of executing contracts and with the funding cap that they have to spend. They're allowed to award up to $25 million a year in grants. And if one year bleeds over into the next one, that's problematic. So extending the timeline is a problem. And there are a lot of reasons why they don't allow projects to scale downward under the grant program, because it's a safeguard that when we write the building program, we're describing the library that a city or town needs. And they're giving us money to provide the library that our community needs. And if we start scaling down projects, if we give cities and towns the flexibility to downsize projects, everyone will downsize the project, because why wouldn't you? And the long-term effect is that cities and towns will not be getting the libraries that their communities need. That's the gist of the discussion I had about it with Andrea at MBLC. So they're not in favor of that. But again, that was draft language and it was ideas that were put out there, and there's no timeline or guarantee that those are going to be approved as written or in any kind of edited format either.
Let's see, John, you've had your hand up.
Thanks. To that end, and great timing, to that end, I know that on the prior libraries we have worked on, the MBLC has allowed for no more than a 5% deviation from that program.
That's
so
correct.
In this case, if our program is 21,000 square feet, if there was a way, and again, it's not always, so 1,000, that would be 1,000 square feet. So 1,000 square feet could be, several $100,000, 5, 6, who knows? The reason why you don't just, people don't do the program and then take the 5% off is because it's not something you can just pull out. I mean, it's about moving walls and moving, partitions and all those things to make it work. I guess my question is if we still have that flexibility within the existing MBLC regs, is that significant enough? You'd be bringing a different project to the floor. It'd be a different program, it'd be a different price, it'd still be eligible for the grant, but is that something we should consider pursuing? And I guess the question I would have, to Walter, is that significant enough to consider it again?
A 5% decrease would be on the order of $1 million, and let's see.
No,
10% is
Ed,
3 million, 1.5 million.
not a 5% reduction of the cost, a 5% reduction of the square
program.
footage.
Square
the
footage,
program.
okay, pardon me.
So Ed, it would never be a dollar for dollar, like you can't,
Right,
because
okay.
because your HVAC units are still going to be the size that would be designed, so you don't get a dollar for dollar removal. You get you get some, you will save money. You will save a significant amount of money. But my question is 1,000 square foot, if we could pull 1,000 square feet out of the building, if LPA could do it, is that enough? Is that something that would be supported as bringing something different? So on top of the citizens petition and everything else, would that kind of a change be enough scope change for people to say, yeah, okay, it's a different project?
Walter and Sean, are you able to comment on that?
I would say, I think a certain amount of the cost of the project are fixed, right? Relocating the library is a fixed cost. So, if we go back in, I don't remember exactly what the actual construction of the library cost is. So it would really then be a percentage off of that amount.
Yeah, it's
So,
a square foot. Yeah.
If it's $500,000, I don't know that that's material.
Yeah, I guess it's Walter. I would struggle with this either way. I don't know that tilts me completely to saying, yes, that's plenty. Doesn't hurt, but it's a gray area. I'm struggling with this whole theory, so.
Yep. Lee, you've got your hand up. You're on mute, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Did you say Eileen?
I actually was calling on Lee Emery, but Eileen, go ahead, please. Just bear in mind we're out of the public forum now.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was unaware.
Go ahead. You haven't spoken before. Let's hear what you have to say.
Well, I just wasn't too sure. I'm not super familiar with how town government works, but talking about bringing a petition to the select board to try to have a special meeting, I'm just wondering, with the election coming up, are we allowed to put this on the ballot and have the town voters vote that way without having to do a petition and be able to bring it out so that all who might work or have children or have difficulty getting there, is that something that could be done?
Sean, I think you're the person to answer that question.
No, this is by vote of town meeting.
Okay, I thought so. All right, thanks for the answer.
And the state ballot is long ago closed.
Gotcha.
For November. Yeah.
Lee, you've had your hand up.
If it wasn't raised and appropriate, could it go on the ballot? Do you know?
Well, it's a borrow.
Okay, if it wasn't a borrow, could it go on the ballot? It was just to raise it
I don't
appropriate.
believe there's any way it could go on the ballot. I think, as Walter mentioned, the ballot is officially closed
Yeah.
at this
Okay.
point.
All right. So I do agree with Mary that we should.
Anything else for Jody Fredman?
Pete.
Yes, I know one of the libraries, Gloucester, is basically a private foundation, and they're doing all of their library development and so forth with fundraising. And so the other question that came up in the public forum was the library foundation. And if the library foundation had pledges of a substantial number, I don't know, make it $1 million or some big number, would that allow us to take credit for that and deduct it off of the ask for the town to borrow? What do you have to do to have a foundation get credit to meet the obligation of the grant process?
Yeah, so you still have to request the total amount of the project. Now, but you could during the meeting say the project is 36.67 million. We've got 9.4 million is a grant if passed, plus the foundation has raised or is pledging to raise X towards the project and making a firm commitment, but the article itself would still say we're requesting the full amount of the project. But you could talk to it.
So in Gloucester, there's no town raising, it's all foundation pledge. The town is not underwriting the project.
So if we didn't have to borrow any money, then it would have been a majority vote to pass the new library. But we just don't have that. So.
Eric, for members of the public, Eric Moore is the lead architect from Lamoureux and Pagano Associates.
Thank you, Ed. I just wanted to respond to a couple of comments that were made earlier. One of them there was a question about the cost of the windows by a member of the public, I think, and for the proposed project, it was a little over $700,000 for windows, storefronts, and entries in both the renovated building and the new one. And that's without any markups or overhead and profit. Once you add those in, cost increases. There was a question, I think John asked about the 5% area reduction. And we are already somewhat deficient in MBLC's requirements. So we're within the 5%, but I don't believe we could take an additional 5% out of the building program to start to reduce the square footage of the building. And I heard at the town meeting, there were several comments about it being a big building. Well, it is, because MBLC's program kind of mandates the size of the building. We haven't really increased the square the footprint of the building, but we've gone up a story. We've added 10,000 square feet, and that's where we have to be with MBLC. But if we were going to try and reduce the square footage of the building, we would have to do something like take out the covered porch entry, the children's outside terrace on the upper level. And that's something we could do, and we've looked at it. We've taken a quick look at it, how we might handle that if the building committee had an appetite to go in that direction. We could probably reduce things by about 1,000 square feet, which translated into into cost, that would be a significant reduction. So I just wanted to respond to those things. Thank you.
Thank you. Lee, your hand is up. Or you just put yourself back on mute.
Now can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I don't, okay. Anyway, I agree with Mary, having a citizen's petition in progress that allows them to sort of disrupt things, if you will, to some people's minds about going back for a second ask. But I think it's a perfectly legitimate thing for citizens to do it, and precisely by what Mary stated. And I think it can make a big difference. In terms of what I think we could do better, just listening to what went on at the floor, I think we need to enumerate all of the public forums and their responses, the number of responses, all the presentations to the town meeting and any town votes that were there. Maureen would say, well, we had a survey done, but we didn't have a survey done. We had multiple surveys done. We had an awful lot of people respond to those, and we had presentations at least 3 town meetings for the town knew what was going on, and I think at least 1 town meeting where they had to vote on whether we could move ahead with the budget for what we're already done. So I think to make an argument to the people in that room that part of the legislators' responsibility, and it's all over our levels of legislation, is to meet the people's needs, not to meet the people's needs of the 300 people or the 171 people who voted against it. Their job is to make sure that we come across for the things that our entire population has asked for. And I think we could have been much stronger in just quantifying how many people over the 10 years have said, yes, we want this. And that's our responsibility at the town floor to really take that very seriously, not just my taxes and my grandmother's taxes. I think we could totally debunk the parking availability by using the parking study and having a slide that shows every single one of those parking spots from the Forbes building to Church Street on both sides of the street. I think we do need to emphasize the Delta more than we did. I mean, it's really, if you look at that, it's like a no-brainer, really. I think we have to make it a no-brainer. So if you're voting against it, you just seem to be off your rocker. Then the study, the location study. I think we need to be more specific about why, which locations we looked at and why we rejected them. And some of them we may have rejected, and Maureen can answer this, partly because the MBLC might have said, well, that would not be something that we would approve of or would favor. Moving something across Route 9 just seems so totally ridiculous. But being able to emphasize the importance of how many kids walk from the high school, from Armstrong and Gibbons, how many of those kids walk to the library after? And Ala's suggestion that, when you raise the water, all the ships get raised, that we are keeping teenagers off the street by a lot of things that we do in town. And one of the very important things we do as town is give them a place to be. They can be outside of the library, which very often they are. And that's just as important as being inside the library. They're there in a safe place talking with their friends. I think that needs to be emphasized. And I think we should have a contingent of a few kids, teenagers that are willing to say, yeah, this is really important to us. And all the other projects that we've built had interest. And I think reiterating and emphasizing, we were in line. We did, everybody else were in line. They all had interest too. They were fortunate they weren't doing it at a time where the pricing went way up. Probably the Forbes building had some of that, but we didn't let that stop us. And why should it stop the library? It's just as important as a community resource as saving people's lives, because you know how many kids' lives are changed by using the library. So I think we could do that. And then I think we should go through the town meeting and pick out every single argument that was made from the people that spoke and make sure that we address those specifically. I'm sure we've missed some. We heard the ones that were repeated ad nauseum, but there are probably others that are important. And we had in town, we could probably learn from this. One of the churches, maybe one of you know, I don't know if it's St. Stephen's or the Methodist church that's near the country club. One of them had a hugely successful fundraising. They raised a couple $1 million is what I have as a recollection. So learning from what our successful fundraisers in Westborough have done for different institutions, I think could help us a lot. So that's my hopefully quick summary of what I'm thinking right now.
Thank you. Bob?
Yeah, actually, Lee, that was terrific because you said exactly what I was thinking and going back as the observations from the meeting. But I just quickly, it's interesting. It was in retrospect, my observation was that it was interesting to note that many of the comments from the audience were focused not so much on the price tag, though that was a huge factor, but on other issues such as location, parking, utilization, alternative sites. So if you want to look at a silver lining moving forward, if we bring this back with ARPA funds or a different scope or whatever, I think now we know what those people are thinking. And I think if we're better prepared to address all their comments and concerns and address them in a very articulate way, okay, yes, the parking study, this about utilization, alternative sites, and have all that, I think we'll be much in a better position to sell our argument. I did have one question, but I'll wait till other people have comments and then I'll ask my question about something that happened at town meeting, at that meeting Monday night that I'm not familiar with, but I just want to find out.
I'm going to jump in for a sec. We had the three options I mentioned. One is do nothing, one is the citizen petition, and one is the library or trustees or whatever it turns out to be asking the selectmen. I'm wondering if we can, I'd like to sort of focus the discussion on that idea. We were talking a lot about how we might do better in a meeting, and we haven't yet decided whether or how we're going to have a meeting. So let's stay focused on what actions we might need, whether we want to ask for another meeting. And I know that all the library trustees think it's a good idea in the right circumstances, but and get that question answered, and then we can decide what to do in that meeting if it's going to happen. So can I have a motion either, I guess, to support the citizen petition, because it's not exactly our petition, it's a citizen's petition, or to bring the idea directly to the select board. And those are fuzzy. Whoever's going to make the motion can try and make it more precise.
Ed, this
Yep.
is Walter. I just think it's difficult to support a citizen petition until the petition's written,
Okay.
because I don't know what it says.
So then let's have, can someone make a motion to request that the select board have schedule a special town meeting to vote the library again?
So you're making
I'm asking, I don't know if I can make it as the chair, but I want
I'm
to.
just asking for clarification. Are you asking for the library building committee to recommend to the trustees?
That's what we would do, I believe.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is that a pure just recommendation because we lost, or I agree with Walter and another gentleman that spoke earlier from the public forum that unless the funding has been changed or the scope has been changed significantly, I think it's tough to go back and say we want another bite at the apple.
That's Bob, I actually agree with you on that, but I'd like to have a vote so that and if we don't like that idea, then we vote no, and then that will settle the question that way.
All right, I'll make the recommendation. I recommend that the library building committee I make a motion for the library building committee to recommend to the Westborough Public Library trustees to request from the select board a special town meeting to bring this project up.
We have a second?
For discussion, I'll second that.
Okay, so let's discuss that motion. I know
that
we've already had
motion
some.
Can that motion be repeated? Because right at the end, it broke out.
Oh, sure. So I'm making a motion for the library building committee to recommend to the Westborough Public Library trustees request from the select board to bring this article back for another special town meeting.
And I seconded it for matters of discussion.
Okay.
May I say something?
Of course.
Okay, I'm not opposed to us sending that to the selectmen, but I do think that we should encourage our citizens to do their own petition. I don't think there's any problem with having two of those. The Board of Selectmen has never, ever, to my knowledge, gotten a petition from 200 residents. I think that would be a real wake-up call about how this happened. And I think it would provide one difference, that really were that many people who were very concerned, who either felt disenfranchised or feel that the process wasn't well done. And the Board of Selectmen want to be responsive to their constituents. So I think it would really get their attention, whether it would help us in the long run or not. But I don't think there's anything to lose. I don't see a downside to having a citizen's petition, and I think it could be helpful. So I would still support us having the Board of Trustees, but I don't want to dump the citizens petition.
I don't think those motions are mutually exclusive. I think we could vote yes on either or both, or no on either or both. Any other comments?
Yeah, I'm opposed to the motion as stated at this time, unless there is a material change. I would, as an alternative, I'm trying to think of how to finesse this, but it could be appropriate for the Library Building Committee to send a letter to the Select Board and discuss the concerns that have been discussed here in regard to disenfranchising and the structure of fall town meeting, and try to lay some foundation without crossing the line to ask for a new town meeting. I think an expression of the feedback, the many people that participated in this meeting is an expression of the concern, but do it in a form of a informational letter to the Select Board, I think would be a more productive step.
Let me suggest, let's go ahead and have our vote on this, and then Pete, you can make that a motion, and we'll vote separately on that. I think that's a great idea. And if it passes, then we'll delegate somebody to draft a letter, and we'll put it together and send it off. Other comments? Lee?
No, I'm sorry. I'll take it down.
Okay.
I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay. I'm not sure if I can see all the selectmen here, so all of the building committee here.
I'll look for you.
Okay.
I just learned how to do that. We only have 2 pages, and I don't see anybody with a hand up on the second page.
Okay. Any other comments on this motion? Then I'm going to call for a vote. Lee?
Yes. Emery, yes.
Ed Baldwin, no. Pete?
Done back now.
Bob?
Oh, Petroselli, no.
Let's see, here we go. Sean?
Theo, no.
Maureen?
Amy, yes.
Okay, and Walter?
Leslie, no.
Mary?
Johnston, yes.
Let's see, and Bill?
Lene, no.
Did I get everybody? Is Al Gordon on the call?
He is not.
Okay, so I believe that is everyone. If I miss somebody, sing out. Mary, were you counting? What are our results?
Yeah, hold on one second. I just lost my notes. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 opposed and 3 in support.
Okay, so that motion fails, and we are not going to recommend that the trustees contact the select board about this issue. Okay, so next, Pete, you suggested something. Would you like to make a motion on that?
Yeah,
and actually, we may not need it. We may not need a motion yet. We could, I guess, decide to write the letter and then move whether or not to send it to the board later on.
I was just struggling with that. It's a motion would end up with like a blank check. So we'd need to see the letter and then vote to send it to the select board.
Okay.
Sense.
Can we get just a sense of the committee? Does anyone disagree with that idea?
I agree.
Okay. I also agree.
I agree.
Okay.
I agree.
That's fine.
Okay.
Agree.
Does anybody want to volunteer to draft that letter?
I'll work with somebody.
Okay. Yeah, I can, Bill, I'll work with you on that, and then we can circulate it to the rest of the committee.
If somebody drafts drafts it, I can comment on it. I don't want to take the lead on drafting it.
Okay. I'll let you and I get together and try and put something together.
Yes.
Okay.
And I would just make the comment that as we have a public comment period here, there is also one at the beginning of every select board meeting.
Okay.
It is typically scheduled for 10 minutes. So the assumption is people are going to have about 3 minutes to speak.
Mm-hmm.
But if you let the town manager know in advance, they may be able to extend that period if more people want to come in front of the select board to speak. So I would say if, a lot of people showed up here today who are interested in this project, in either side of it, if they wanted to come to the next select board meeting, please let the town manager's office know in advance, and we can, try and make sure that you're available to speak if there's not too many folks who would like to come in front of us. So I just want to put that out there as well.
Or ask them to put it on the agenda. And then we really get some publicity and people can speak.
If it's listed every time,
Maureen, would it be okay to ask the members of the public who are here to let you know if you'd be interested, and we can get a sort of account and let the select board know about that?
That's fine.
Okay. So I will ask the members of the public. Sorry, go ahead.
Make a comment? I just wanted to say for the members of the public who are here that, and I think I'm speaking correctly. If I'm not, someone correct me, that just because our committee voted for the trustees not to approach the Board of Selectmen about this, does not mean that we are opposed to residents doing so. And I think that we would welcome we would welcome that if there was a resident who wished to spearhead that effort.
I also just wanted to tack on, Maureen, that doesn't also mean that the trustees don't make their own decision to do that.
True.
Great. For what it's worth, it seems to me that a petition signed by 200 people would be sort of a new fact in regards to the situation, and that might make it worthwhile for the select board to consider. Having said that, Walter, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to thank all the people from the public who showed up. I think in hindsight, I wished we had done something similar to this maybe before to further push encouragement of people having come and spoken at the meeting, and maybe we could have gotten some ideas. I mean, we did have a public forum, but I just think it's great to get that input, and I wish maybe that would have gotten more people out to vote in favor if we had done this sooner. So live and learn, but I think just thank you to everybody who spent some time today to give us feedback.
Okay. Is there anything else we want to vote on? And in particular, should we vote to encourage the public to do that petition?
I think so.
So I don't think we should be voting to encourage the public to do that petition.
Okay.
It needs to be an independent public citizens petition.
All right.
Okay.
I'm okay with that, Mary.
That works. Okay. Are there any, so I think we've sort of determined our plans going forward at this point. Is that correct? Is there anything else we need to discuss?
I think one other thing.
We haven't discussed anything about, well, first of all, are we having our regular meeting next Tuesday or not?
That was just my question too, Walter.
And B, we haven't discussed at all any kind of working towards getting the town to fund a renovation effort.
That has to go on another agenda.
It would
That
count
would
as part
be-
of plans going forward, I believe. But
To me, that was the most laid out plan to go forward, and because that was what was voted. So yeah, I mean I'm happy to, given the length of the meeting, to talk about that Tuesday or something, but I think that's something we should get going on, because that may be the way it goes. I don't know.
Bob,
Don't
you've got
have
your
much
hand up?
time to waste.
Lee, your audio is breaking up, so we couldn't hear what you said. And you're on mute again.
Can you hear me now?
Sorry, yeah.
Okay.
Were you talking to me?
I
Oh,
agree.
that's-
We don't have much time to waste. And there's also the issue that, our consultant brought up, John. Should we also go ahead and see what would happen if we scale down the 2 porches? Because I think that would clearly demonstrate that we heard people and that we're willing to look at some kind of alteration. If that's something that could happen with what we already have as a budget, I think maybe we should consider that as an indication that we're flexible.
Bob, you've got your hand up?
Sure. I had a question, and it did relate to Monday evening and some of the discussion, but it also, I think, could help us lessons learned about what we need to prepare for. For example, if we do get ARPA funds and we go back to a town meeting, a member of the finance committee, after we had our discussion, went up to the microphone to express his opposition to the project, which is his right. But in his final comment, there was a comment that the project was really 50 million, not 38 million, due to borrowing costs. And I don't know, again, town finance, would this come up again? I mean, if we say, oh, guess what, the 28 million with the state grant's going to come down because we need a scope, or this, or because we have more ARPA money, or we're doing a renovation instead for 18 million, could the finance committee then say, what about the borrowing costs? That's part A, which I don't understand. And part B, what I still didn't understand is, why was that brought up only for our project and not, let's say, the 4 million for the wastewater treatment plant? That borrowing cost would make it 6 million, or the 10,000 for that elevator repair was really 13,000 because of borrowing costs. I mean, what are the rules of the game with this? I mean, why was it just used for us? But I don't know. That's all I'm asking.
I think we know.
I know, but I wanted to ask that because it really bothered me.
Maybe
So,
Walter can answer that.
Okay, I can speak to that. We put in the booklet, actually, at insistence of several of us who felt that if we were going to talk about the library, the borrowing cost estimate was included for the water treatment plant. It isn't for an elevator, because you don't borrow money to fix a $20,000 elevator. I think that was
a lot of them were funds. I understand that, but I didn't know.
Yeah. So anything that's paid out of free cash. So we've been talking at the AFC that in general, borrowing costs are ignored, and that in the future that should be mentioned. It can't be in the article because you're not borrowing the estimated money, you're borrowing the actual money, and you have to make guesses on the interest rate. I think the 50 number was inflated. I think it was in the 40s or something, whatever Leah came up with as our town finance director came up with the calculation for us. We don't do those calculations. And it's just a little bit of a transparency thing. I think throwing it in like was done is more inappropriate as a jab, but I think in our booklet, mentioning that in commentary is something I think we'll be doing on all capital projects in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Ron.
Yes, thank you. Now I'm trying to remember what I was going to say.
Never happens to me.
You don't look over 65.
I'll raise my hand again if it comes back to me.
Okay. Bill, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I just sent Mary about 5 or 6 things that I was unable to post in the chat. They're similar to anything that's been said, so there's no sense of taking time for that, but she can include it.
Okay. there's a note here in the chat from public to everyone saying perhaps the opposing group also needs to get 200 signatures. And I think if they did that, sent that to the select board, the select board would clearly take that into account. Okay. Any other comments? So let me get a sense of the building committee. Do we want to try and start working on, I'll call it Plan B again, in more detail in this meeting?
I don't think so in this meeting. I think we should digest some of what's being said and call a follow-up meeting.
Yeah.
I'm not ready.
Yeah.
Need to do a little background first, I guess. And it should be
Okay.
on the agenda, I think,
Okay.
that particular item.
Mhm.
It's not just discussing town meeting.
Well,
Okay.
the agenda included steps forwardly, so it's in
Okay.
bounds, but I think we're kind of washed up with it. We need to, I think what I would like to hear about that, and I think we maybe then should have a meeting Tuesday or whenever the next one is, would be some thoughts from our architect and OPM on how we go about that process.
Good point, Walter.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So I think the next question is, when is the next meeting? And currently we're scheduled for next Tuesday at 3:30.
Mm-hmm.
Does that, I may have a problem with that. I have to see whether I can reschedule something. Does that work for people?
Yes.
Okay, then I think we have the next meeting, 3:30 on Zoom on Tuesday, the 25th, I believe it is. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Any other business for the meeting? Sean, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I just sort of wanted to say thank you to everybody who joined this meeting today. You know, I think this is 5 times our usual attendance for a library building committee meeting. So it does show, you know, either way you consider the project, that it's important to you. And so it's much appreciated. You know, although the town vote, you know, didn't go in favor at this past town meeting, you know, that's not the end of the process. You know, I mean, something needs to happen with the building. So, you know, we're going to have further discussions and, you know, we'll see what happens. But I appreciate all the interest here today. Thank you very much.
I have,
You had a great job on a masterful job on chairing the meeting today with so many people, and you know, you did a great job organizing everything.
Thank you.
I want to point out that Tuesday afternoon at 4 to 6, I think it is the trick or treat in the municipal buildings. It's Tuesday afternoon. We just want to look at the calendar and make sure we're not conflicting with the 3:30 meeting. I would propose a different day.
Why, Pete, why do you think us having a Zoom meeting would conflict?
I won't be here. I'll be trick-or-treating with the kids.
Oh, okay, all right.
And I'll be answering the door.
Okay, all right, well, that's good enough reason.
Okay, so that's actually, that's
Maybe
3
we
members.
maybe we can do another doodle poll or something and pick a date.
I'll send one out for a meeting date next week that is not Tuesday.
Okay, is there any particular reason to have it before the trustees meeting next Wednesday evening?
I think it would be important.
I agree.
To have our meeting before the trustees meeting?
Or defer the trustees meeting. We need to bring good information to the trustees.
So that would be the 24th?
Could the meeting be at 1 o'clock on Tuesday?
Nope, I teach till 3:30.
Okay. Sorry, thank you.
How about Monday, the 24th?
It's probably too late.
Let's see, it's Thursday today.
They're not gonna get it posted till tomorrow morning, Friday morning. I think it's.
Yep, you're right.
So it would have to be Wednesday at 3:30.
That works for me.
Actually, I believe Friday morning at 9 o'clock would get you Tuesday at 9 o'clock, so I think it does work. For the 2 business days.
Yeah,
I'm gonna-
Wednesday will work. Tuesday would work, but not Monday.
I'm going to be in Western Mass. So I probably won't get back before 4:30, but I'll join the meeting.
I'm okay.
I'm okay with what?
So people are being okay with Wednesday at 3:30? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, I'll post it for Wednesday at 3:30.
Thank you. So also before we close, I also want to thank the public. We had at one point pretty near 75 people here, which is, I'd need about 3 extra screens to see all that at once. That's great to see the amount of interest that the town has in the library. Thank you very much. Anything else?
Motion to adjourn.
A second?
Second.
So Pete.
Yes. Gunbeck, yes.
Ed Baldwin, yes. Sean?
Yo, yes.
Bob?
Petroselli, yes.
Lee?
Yes. Emery, yes.
Maureen?
Amy, yes.
Mary?
Johnston, yes.
Bill?
Lenine, yes.
And did I miss anyone? Oh, Walter. Sorry.
Leslie, yes.
And I think that's everyone. Okay.
I just want to say, despite us being critical ourselves of how things went, that Mary and Maureen did absolutely the best job they could.
Here,
And
here.
I couldn't believe how well they kept their cool as I
Oh,
was
here,
melting
here,
in my
yes.
chair. Really, that wasn't an easy thing to do, and you did it very
Yeah.
graciously and honestly.
Yeah. Every answer was a home run. Concise, clear, measured, and truthful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Eric, did you have your hand up? Are you on mute?
I was clapping.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Good job, Marty.
I forgot the difference in icons there. Okay.
Mary too. Great job.
Yep.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.